الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اهتدى بهداه إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. This is our second hour of our commentary on Ash-Shamā'il Al-Tirmidhiyyah by Imam Al-Tirmidhi rahimahullah tabaraka wa ta'ala. And today we're going to speak about the era of Imam Tirmidhi rahimahullah. Where was Imam Tirmidhi? How was he? Who was Imam Tirmidhi? What is Tirmidh? What is this city that he's referred to? So Imam Tirmidhi actually lived in the 3rd Islamic century in the Abbasid Empire. So he lived from the year 210 to the year 279, which means he lived nearly 70 years. So this era had a lot of nine caliphs. Like the first one was Al-Ma'mun, then his brother Al-Mu'tasim, then his son Al-Wathiq, then his son Al-Mutawakkil, then his son Al-Muntasir, then Al-Musta'in, then Al-Mu'taz, then Al-Muhtadi, then Al-Mu'tamid. And in this era, there were a lots of diplomatic and religious problems. And therefore, in this era, there was a great there was a great resurrection in knowledge. So there were lots of jurists, a lot of muhaddithun, a lot of scholars that wrote great books in this era. I'm not going to mention all the caliphs that were in that era because there are a lot. If you go mentioning all those, that's going to take a lot of time. But just to take an eye on that era, the 3rd Islamic century was a great century of hadith. He had a lot of scholars of hadith, and these muhaddithun used to travel from place to place, from all what is called nowadays Turkestan, which is called in Arabic Biladu ma wara an-nahr, the land that is behind the river. What is the river here? The river here is called Amudarya, and which is the river that is between Afghanistan and Turkestan. So you have there nowadays lots of republics that were under the occupation of the Soviet Union, and then they got independence. You have Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, all these stands. In that era, all this land was one land that was mixed between Turkic people and Persian people. And it was a great land that was full of scholars. So it was continuous of the Persian Empire in ancient days, but later on it was all under the Islamic state. So we had great scholars in this era that took care of what is called in Ilm al-Hadith, Ilm al-Jarh wa al-Ta'dil, which means they mention every narrator and they speak about his trustworthy and all what has to do with him, so that they can say, is he reliable to narrate from, or he's not reliable to narrate from. We have in this era great scholars like Yahya ibn Ma'in, Ali ibn al-Madini, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, Imam al-Bukhari, Abu Zur'a and Abu Hatim al-Raziyan, and we have Imam al-Tirmidhi, we have al-Nasa'i, and all these great scholars. These are the great scholars of hadith. And these are the great scholars that gathered the sayings of the Prophet ﷺ and compiled it in books, which are the 6 books that we have nowadays. So most of these 6 books were written in this era. Okay, so these were great scholars in that era, and they wrote and they compiled these great books. These are the professors of Imam al-Tirmidhi, and these are his colleagues as well, and his students. And you can find lots of scholars in this era that took care of this. What are the knowledge, and what is the knowledge that was spread in that era? Well, we can say that the land of Bilad Mawara al-Nahr, which is called the land of, which is now called Turkestan, in that era it was called the land behind the river. The river here is Amudarya, but it's called now, it was called in the history, or in Arabic, Nahr Jayhun. It's the river that is between now Afghanistan and Turkestan. So we have in this land, in the ancient days, we used to have lots of five lands. We have a land called the Sughd, which had Bukhara and Samarkand. Now they call it Uzbekistan. And we have to the west a land called Khwarizm, or they call it nowadays Khaywa. And we have Saghaniyan, and we have Farghana, and we have Shash, which is now called Tashqand. All these lands were great lands that gave us lots of great scholars. Most of these were Sunnis in that era, but they were mostly Hanafis, and they had some Shafi'is there. But most of Ahl Hadith were either Shafi'is or somehow Hanbalis. Those are the most madhahib that were there. And in their aqidah, in their creed, most of them were either there were Sunnis actually, but the school of there were some Karramis and Shi'is in some places there in that era. So, and the Karramiyya is a school that were Hanafis, but they spread in that place. They spread, and they were in the days of there was a great land, or the great country called Ghazni or Ghazna, which is nowadays in Afghanistan. This Ghazna was a state, and it had a king called Mahmud al-Ghaznawi. Mahmud al-Ghaznawi was a great mujahid, and his land went until India nowadays, or parts of what is called nowadays Pakistan. And the Karramis there were so strong. The Karramis used to consider themselves as Sunnis, but they had some specific ideas that the Sunni creed disagrees with it. Okay? But there was a very bad sect that came out of this land, which is called the Jahmis. The Jahmis. The Jahmis came from Khurasan. Khurasan is a great land that is all of north Iran and north Afghanistan nowadays. All this land is called Khurasan. So this is when we speak about, but the most greatest school there was the school of Al Hadith. They were great schools. They were great imams, because we can find in that land Imam al-Bukhari from Bukhara, his student Muhammad ibn Isa al-Tirmidhi from Tirmidh, Imam Muhammad ibn Hibban al-Tamimi al-Samarqandi from Samarqand, and Abdurrahman ibn Abdullah ibn Abdurrahman al-Samarqandi, and others, great imams from all these cities. Okay? There were great jurists from the Shafi'i and the Hanafi school. We have Imam al-Qaffal al-Shashi, we have Imam Abu Mansur al-Maturidi, who was well known. He and Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari are two scholars of creed, and they have lots of. He's from a city called Maturid, or a village so close to Samarkand now. Samarkand is well known in nowadays in Uzbekistan. So therefore, most Hanafis followed Abu Mansur al-Maturidi. Most Hanafis followed Abu Mansur al-Maturidi. There were Sufis and stuff like that there, and they had some followers, but actually in this era, most people were strict to the Sunnah. So anybody who comes with a new idea or whatever, they used to deny him and they used to be against him. And all these types of innovations were rejected by these great scholars. Okay? So this is the situation there. There were lots of, on the other side, scholars in this era had some physicians, some great scholars of geometric and mathematics and stuff like that. Don't forget that Khwarizm gave us the great scholar of mathematics, Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi, and there where people speak about algorithm. Algorithm is derived from the name of Khwarizmi. So therefore, this is very important to know. We have in this era a physician called Hunayn ibn Ishaq. He wasn't Muslim. He was a Christian, I think. Syriac, and he translated lots of books to Arabic, from Persian, Greek, Syrian, and stuff like that. He translated all these works, old works, to Arabic, and people benefit from that. Scholars benefit from these types of. There were lots of, and in this era, Muslims took from Indians lots of knowledge. India was an old land of knowledge. So they took from them mathematics, geometric, and engineering and stuff like that. And all what has to do with cosmetic and stuff like that. And they took from Persians lots of literature, stories, poems, and stuff like that. Muslims took care took care of physician. They took care of it. And Harun Rashid was a great caliph. He created lots of great hospitals in Baghdad and other places, and so therefore, actually, there's a lot to say about this. I don't want to go so deep in this because it's not our topic, but just to know the era where scholars were in this era. Yeah. So there were lots of scholars, a lot of great in all types of knowledge. Muslims in this era were the greatest, actually. Just to know that Muslims in this era were the greatest. Now let us go back to Imam al-Tirmidhi. Who was Imam Tirmidhi, and where did he used to live? Imam Tirmidhi, his name is Muhammad ibn Isa ibn Sawra ibn Musa ibn al-Dhahhak al-Tirmidhi. Okay. He is called al-Tirmidhi al-Bughi al-Sulami. So al-Tirmidhi is referred to a city called Tirmidh. We're going to mention that. Al-Bughi, that's referred to a village that he's originally from which is close to Tirmidh. It's nearly 5 kilometers from, or no, something like that, from Tirmidh. As-Sulami is referred to an Arabic tribe called Banu Sulaym. But is that because he is originally from an Arabic tribe, or because he was allied to an Arabic tribe? Allahu A'lam. Some say that Imam al-Tirmidhi was originally from Maru. Maru is a city now in Turkmenistan, and he says that his grandfather went from Maru to Tirmidh. So what was his origin? I don't know actually. Maybe he was from an Arabic tribe, or maybe he was an ally to an Arabic tribe. And many people were allies to Arabic tribes, so they used to mention their names to that tribe. Like Imam al-Bukhari used to say Al-Ju'fi. It's because his grandfather converted to Islam by Yaman al-Ju'fi, so he became his ally. And that refers to other scholars. They have the same thing. Okay? Imam Tirmidhi was born in the year 209, some say 210, some say 209, and some say 216. You know, people in that era didn't used to take care a lot about these birthdays because when you get born, no one pays attention to you, but when you become a great man, people go back and search for your birthday. Okay? So therefore, this is what scholars say. Where was Imam Tirmidhi born? Where was he born? People don't know exactly. Maybe he was born in his village, in his city. So people don't say exactly where was he born. So it seems that he was born in his city, in his village. That's why they call him At-Tirmidhi al-Bughi, from Bugh, and Bugh is one of the villages of Tirmidh. He was born blind. Imam al-Tirmidhi was blind. So, is that true? Is it true that he was born as blind? Well, some say no. He wasn't blind in the beginning. He became blind in the end of his life. So therefore, we have some stories that he says he used to see a white page, a white paper. And Al-Imam Al-Hafiz Yusuf ibn Ahmad al-Baghdadi said he became blind in the end of his life, in the last years or the last days of his life. And this happened to a lot of scholars, even Al-Imam. It happened to Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, and it happened to Al-Hafiz ibn Kathir, and it happened to others. And Imam Dhahabi, he became blind because they didn't have doctorate as we have nowadays. So they start having problems in their eyes. They don't pay attention to that until they stop looking. They stop seeing. That's why Imam Ibn Kathir says it seems that Imam Tirmidhi became blind in the end of his life after he traveled and he read and he became a great scholar and he wrote books, and then he had this problem. And this is the same opinion of Al-Hafiz Ibn Hajar Al-Asqalani rahimahullah. Hafiz Hajar Al-Asqalani says that Imam Abu Ahmad Al-Hakim says, I heard Umar ibn Mu'allik saying, Muhammad ibn Ismail Bukhari passed away and he didn't leave anybody in Khurasan like Abu Isa Tirmidhi in his knowledge and in his piety. He used to cry until he lost his eyes. So this is the reason. He used to cry until his eyes started stopping to see. Subhanallah al-Azim. Now what is Tirmidh? Where does this city exist? Tirmidh is an old city, and its on the river, they call it the river of Balkh. You know Balkh? Balkh is a city nowadays northern Afghanistan. It doesn't exist anymore, but there is a province called Balkh. But the city there, the greatest city there is called Mazar Sharif. So they say Mazar Sharif, maybe it was called Balkh and then it became Mazar Sharif, because they claim that Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu was buried there, and that he has a great shrine there. That's not true. That's not true at all. Ali ibn Abi Talib was killed in Kufa, so they say that the camel escaped and it stayed running until it reached to Khurasan, and that's it. No, that's not true. Only a superstition. Or it's a superstition, yeah. So anyway, the river here is called Jayhun. Jayhun, then they call it in Russian Amudarya. So this is the river, and the city is an old city there. It became part of the Islamic land in the 70. People there used to be Buddhis. They used to worship Buddha. But later on, they started converting to Islam. It was converted it was conquered by Musa ibn Abdullah ibn Khazim, and he conquered this city in the year 70 Hijri. It was a great city, actually. And there are lots of scholars that refer to Tirmidh. There are a lot of scholars that came from Tirmidh. And some people say that Imam Abu Hanifa is originally from Tirmidh. Because Imam Abu Hanifa actually is Persian. These lands used to speak Persian. But nowadays, most of them speak Turkic languages. So the people of Tirmidh, when they converted to Islam, they used to travel to Khurasan and Iraq, Hijaz, Sham, Egypt to seek knowledge. So therefore, Al-Imam At-Tirmidhi rahimahullah was one of these guys. So we have a lot of scholars that were originally from Tirmidh. I don't want to mention those names because that's a long story. I don't want to, if I go mentioning those scholars that were referred to Tirmidh, it'll take a lot. It's not... Imam Tirmidhi, after a long life, 70 years, it's not so long actually. 70 years, it's not so long. But he spent the whole life seeking knowledge, and in the end, he passed away on Monday, 13th of Rajab, 279, in a village called Bough, which is one of the cities of Tirmidh. And some say that he passed in Tirmidh, but it's like when you mention a village that is referred to a city. So you say, well, he passed away in that city. Okay? There's no conflict between that. Bough and Tirmidh are the same, because that's a village that is referred to a city. Let us now start speaking about this great scholar. The Imam Tirmidhi rahimahullah has lots of professors. He has a lot of professors. Maybe they are nearly 200. And some of them are the same professors that Bukhari and Muslim sought knowledge from. And some of them are only the professors of Bukhari or professors of Muslim. And some of them are his professors, yeah. So, he has some professors that Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawud, Nasai, and Ibn Majah took knowledge from. So these 6 books are in the same era, subhanallah al-azim. And he went seeking knowledge from all lands that were known by knowledge in that era, like Hijaz, Basra, Kufa, Baghdad, Ray, and Khurasan. What is Ray now? Ray is part of Tehran, which is now the capital of Iran. It was greater and bigger than Tehran, but Tehran became greater and swallowed it. So it's one now. Ray is one of the districts of Tehran. Yeah. So Al-Hafiz Al-Mizzi rahimahullah said that he went traveling in the land and he heard a great number of people from Khurasan, Iraq, Hijaz, and others. Seems that he never went to Egypt nor Syria. But he narrates from the scholars of these lands by others. Why? Well, some scholars say maybe because there were lots of problems in those countries, fighting and wars and stuff like that. And it seems some scholars say that maybe he even didn't go to Baghdad, which was the capital of Islam. Because if he went to Baghdad, he would have narrated from Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. But we don't have anything that proves that he narrated from Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. So even Khatib al-Baghdadi rahimahullah didn't mention him in his encyclopedia of Baghdad, Tarikh Dar es-Salam or Tarikh Baghdad, a great book in 10 volumes. So he didn't mention Imam al-Tirmidhi, which means that he never went to the capital of Islam. So strange, subhanallah. But others said, no, he went to Baghdad. It's impossible that he won't go to Baghdad. And that's why other scholars said that he went to Baghdad and he narrated from a lot of scholars of Baghdad. Why didn't Al-Khatib al-Baghdadi mention him in his book? Maybe the published copy dropped him from so maybe there are other copies that we can find his name in it. Maybe, Allahu Alam, I don't know. This is what some scholars. Why didn't he hear from Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal? Well, maybe he entered Baghdad after the death of Imam Ahmad, which was in year 241. Maybe that could happen. So let us see who are the great teachers of Imam al-Tirmidhi rahimahullah. We have Ibrahim ibn Yaqub al-Juzajani. This Ibrahim ibn Yaqub al-Juzajani is one of the great students of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. We have Abu Mus'ab al-Zuhri. This is the greatest student of Imam Malik rahimahullah. He was in Medina. Abu Mus'ab al-Zuhri is from the descendants of Abdurrahman ibn Auf radiyallahu anhu. So he was the judge of Medina after Imam Malik rahimahullah passed away. He was one of his professors. We have one of his great professors are Al-Imam Al-Bukhari rahimahullah. Many students of Imam Ahmad Hanbal were his professors, like Ishaq bin Mansur and others. And from the great Imams, we have Hassan ibn Sabbah al-Za'farani. He's the narrator of his book. The narrator, Za'farani, is the narrator of his book, yes. And, sorry. He's his professor, not the narrator of his book. But we have Al-Rabi' ibn Sulaiman, the student of Imam al-Shafi'i. Al-Rabi', the great student of Imam Shafi'i, he was one of his professors too. So you see how these Imams take from each other and they're so close to each other, subhanallah al-azim. You have Abu Dawood al-Sijistani. Abu Dawood al-Sijistani, one of the great narrators of Sunnah and the great students of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. He's originally from Sijistan, which is called nowadays Sistan. It's land that is between Afghanistan and Iran. South Iran and Afghanistan. We have, but his greatest professor is Al-Imam Al-Bukhari. Muhammad ibn Ismail Al-Bukhari Al-Ju'fi rahimahullah. He's his greatest professor. And he mentions from Imam Bukhari lots of knowledge. He mentions that a lot in his book. He mentions that in his book, yeah. Okay, I don't want to go so far in this. So, yeah. Now, who are the students of Imam Tirmidhi? Well, actually, Imam Tirmidhi has lots of students. If we're going to mention his students, we're going to mention lots of names because he spent his life. Most people of Khurasan narrated from him. Most people of Samarkand and Nasaf and all that land took knowledge from him. Imam Al-Hafiz Al-Mizzi rahimahullah mentioned lots of his students by the alphabetic names, by the alphabetic, So he mentioned their names. I don't want to mention all of that. You can, but one of the narrators of his Jami' is Abu al-Abbas al-Mahbubi al-Marwazi. He's the one who narrated his Jami'. So, yeah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Great names, great scholars. So strange that Imam al-Bukhari, although he's the professor of Imam Tirmidhi, he heard from him some narrations. So strange. And you have this, a great scholar narrates from his students. And one of the great students of Imam Tirmidhi is Imam Ibn Abi Dunya, great scholar, great well-known scholar. Ibn Abi Dunya has lots of books. Imam Tirmidhi wasn't only a narrator. Imam Tirmidhi was a jurist, and you can find his opinions in jurisprudence in his Sahih, in his Sunan. You know, Imam Tirmidhi's book, Sunan, is one of the 6 great Sunni books. So there where he mentions his fiqh. And we know that Imam Tirmidhi was a muhaddith, but was he a jurist? Yes. He was a great jurist. And he took most of his knowledge and he was addicted to his Shaykh, Imam Al-Bukhari rahimahullah. Imam Sam'ani says that he was student of Imam Bukhari and he narrated from many of his professors like Qutayba ibn Sa'id and Ali ibn Hajar al-Marwazi and Hannad ibn Sari and others. Now, he is one of the great scholars that always, when he mentions a hadith, he says what the other scholars say about that. Very interesting. And sometimes he mentions opinions of scholars that we don't find it except in that book. Like the school of Imam Al-Awza'i, Sufyan al-Thawri, and Ishaq ibn Rahawayh, and others. And he is one of the scholars that preserved the old madhab of Imam Shafi'i, rahimahullah. So Imam Shafi'i has 2 schools. He has the old school and the new school, the Iraqi school and the Egyptian school. So Imam Al-Tirmidhi mentions the old school, which was when he was in Iraq. And that's the school that the Eastern scholars of Khurasan and stuff like that mention it, because they were close to Baghdad, which is the capital of Islam, where Imam Shafi'i was in the beginning. So we can find in his great book, Al-Jami', where it's called Sunan, he mentions the opinions of all great scholars that passed away. Like the opinions of Imam Malik, Shafi'i, Ahmad, Ishaq ibn Rahawayh, Sufyan al-Thawri, Abdullah ibn Mubarak, Al-Awza'i, Ma'mar ibn Rashid, and Sufyan ibn Uyayna. And he can say that this is the opinion of most scholars, or the people of Kufa, or the people of Medina, or Sahaba, or Tabi'in, or whatever, just like that in general. He mentions the opinions of the scholars with its evidence. Now, what is his school exactly? What was the Imam Tirmidhi? Was he Shafi'i, Hanafi, Maliki, Hanbali? What was he? Actually, he used to follow the school of Ahl Hadith, as we see in the book of his Jami'. So many times he says, and this is what our fellows or our friends say. And he mentions Shafi'i, Ahmad, Ishaq, which means that his fellows are Shafi'i, Ahmad, and Ishaq. By the way, Ahmad and Ishaq were considered as students of Shafi'i. So that's why many people consider all the 6 narrators of the books as Shafi'is. But actually, they're not exactly Shafi'is. They are from Ahl Hadith, who follow the Hadith. They're not from the people of Kufa. They're not from the people of Medina. They're from the people of Hadith. And this is why Imam al-Tirmidhi never mentions Abu Hanifa. But if he mentions from Kufa, Sufyan al-Thawri. And usually, Sufyan al-Thawri's opinion is the same opinion of Imam Abu Hanifa. The people of Hadith used to prefer Sufyan al-Thawri than Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah. Okay? Okay. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. So many times he mentions his opinion and he says that, and he says what is the best idea and opinion and stuff like that. And it's not true that he was Shafi'i, because many times he disagrees with Imam Shafi'i as well. He wasn't an imitator. He didn't used to imitate any Imam. He used to have his own opinion. Al-Shaykh Al-Imam Abdul Rahman Al-Mubarak Puri, rahimahullah, one of the great Imams of India last century, he has a great commentary on Sunan al-Tirmidhi called Tuhfatul Ahwadi Bisharh Jami' al-Tirmidhi. This is the greatest commentary on the book of Imam Tirmidhi. He wrote a chapter mentioning what was the school of Imam al-Tirmidhi rahimahullah. By the way, India gave the Ummah great scholars. And when I say the India, I mean the subcontinent of India, which contains Pakistan and Bangladesh as well. Okay. Imam Tirmidhi rahimahullah met a lots of great scholars of his era. So he benefits from his teacher, Imam Bukhari, and he took from him a long time, and he benefit from him in lots of branches of hadith science. That's why he mentions his name a lot. He said, "I asked Muhammad about something." He just says Muhammad. In the ancient days, they didn't used to take care of these titles, Shaykh, Al-Ustad, Al-Imam. No, they just mention the name like that. That doesn't mean they don't respect the person, but that's the way that was in that era. So Imam Tirmidhi benefit a lot from him. And he met Imam Muslim ibn al-Hajjaj al-Nisaburi. But he only narrated one hadith from his way. I don't know why. It's only one hadith. And he met Imam Abu Dawood al-Sijistani as well. I mentioned that before. And he narrated some narrations from him. Or he mentioned his opinion. He just mentioned his opinion. He didn't even narrate from him something. And the opinion is there he mentioned something that he referred to Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal rahimahullah. But he was influenced a lot by Imam Bukhari. He even wrote his book in the same way of the book of Imam Bukhari rahimahullah. And he wrote some books that are similar to books of Imam Bukhari, like his book that is called Al-Ilal and others. So, I mean, the influence of Imam Bukhari on him was so big. It was so big. Yes. And he actually mentions him a lot in his book. He mentions him a lot in his book. So this is very interesting to show how Imam and the most strange thing that Imam Bukhari once narrated from him. Subhanallah, look how Imam Bukhari was humble. Abu al-Fadl al-Baylamani said, I heard Nasr bin Muhammad Ash-Shirkuhi saying, I heard Muhammad ibn Isa Tirmidhi saying, Muhammad ibn Ismail told me, Bukhari, I benefit from you more than you benefit from me. Subhanallah. This means that Imam Bukhari was so humble to say that. To tell your student that I benefit from you more than you benefit from me, that means you're so humble. Okay? Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Okay, what are the books that Imam Tirmidhi wrote? Well, Imam Tirmidhi wrote lots of books, many interesting books. So we can say, not a lot like the latest books. Latest books, scholars used to write a lot. You can find them writing 500 books, like what they mentioned Ibn Taymiyyah wrote, or 100 or less or whatever. But in the ancient days, they used to write only few books, but every book is very neat and important. So if we see the books that Imam Tirmidhi wrote, we're going to find the most important book is his Jami'. It's called Al-Jami' Al-Mukhtasar min As-Sunan على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ومعرفة الصحيح والمعلول وما عليه العمل. What does that mean? It means the compiled, summarized book from the tradition of the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم, and knowing what is authentic and what is not authentic, and what are the narrations that are practiced. This book is known by Jami' al-Tirmidhi or Al-Jami' al-Kabir, and some call it Sunan al-Tirmidhi. So this is the name of the book, and this is the meaning of the book. It was published several times, and you can find it, and it was edited and a lot of things. There's a lot of work on it actually, and it has a lot of commentaries. But the best commentary that is well spread is the commentary Tuhfat al-Ahwadi by Al-Imam Al-Mubarakfuri, who passed away in the last century actually. We have the second book is called Al-Ilal Al-Saghir. Al-Ilal means problematic things, which means the problems that are in the chains or in the text of the hadith. And this book is added to his Ilal, to his Sunan. And so it's published with the book. Now he has other book called Al-Ilal Al-Kabir. This book is 2 volumes. And there are many scholars worked on it actually. It's a great book, yeah. He has another book, small book called Tasmiyatu Ashabi Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the names of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's companions. And some call it the names of the Sahaba. And Ash-Shamā'il that we're speaking about. And he has another book called Az-Zuhd. Acidic. Is it Zuhd? Acidic. And he has the history, the names, and and tafsir, other books, small books like that. But the main 2 books are Al-Jami' and Sunan, Jami' and Shama'il. These two are the great books of Al-Imam At-Tirmidhi rahimahullah tabaraka wa ta'ala. Al-Imam Abu Ismail Al-Harawi rahimahullah says, the book of Abu Isa Tirmidhi, I consider it more beneficial than Bukhari and Muslim. So he was asked why. He said, because the book of Bukhari and Muslim, you can't benefit from it unless you have a scholar that would show you how to benefit from it. But this book, he mentioned everything for you. So you can benefit from it directly. Al-Imam ibn Khayr al-Ishbili says that Imam al-Hafiz Abu Umar ibn Abd al-Barr says three summarized books, I love it and I prefer it. The book of Abu Isa Tirmidhi in Sunan, the book of Rulings of Quran by Ibn Bukayr, and the summarized book of Ibn Abd al-Hakam. So this is the book of Imam Tirmidhi, and you can go back to that and benefit from it if you want. Okay. The second book of Imam Tirmidhi, which is the book that we're studying, which is Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad, the Sunan. I think, Sunan. And he has the book of Ilal that I mentioned. And I think this is what we can say about Imam Tirmidhi and his book, and the work on his, So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we benefit from this book that we're going to study bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. And inshallah, next time we'll start mentioning the chapters of the book and all what we can speak about. And I think we'll leave it here, inshallah. And bi-idhnillahi ta'ala, you can, after that, ask me whatever you want. Thank you very much for being patient with me. Alhamdulillah, sallallahu alaihi wa sallam, wa jazakumullahu khayran.